Welcome back to the Command Stack. This is episode 5, and it is a special episode. It is our GenCon 2022 coverage. So let's see who we have with us here today.
Everyone, it's Ken.
I'm Garrett.
I'm Ryan.
And we are your Command Stack. So one of the great things that happened at GenCon is it was the first time that all 4 of us ended up being at the same place at the same time. And that was super excited for me to meet both of you because I hang out with Ken all the time, but I've not met you guys in person, and being able to meet you guys and hang out was a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a good time meeting y'all. I feel like we're gonna have a much more personable conversation now.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you guys, as well as there were a lot of content creators there too.
Yes, there was mainly most of the people that do YouTube were there, which was really cool. We had some great conversation in between rounds. So that was a lot of fun. It was just great. I think my favorite part of the GenCon experience was meeting everyone from everywhere that came into it.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. I know that when we got there Thursday, we were looking around the dealer hall. There was a lot of Kickstarter stuff from a variety of different vendors. But it really, I think the fun began. Garrett, I think you came in late Friday?
I think so. That sounds right.
Yeah. And then we got a chance to start hanging out with you. And then, Ryan, we got to see you on Saturday and Saturday night and into Sunday. I think all the fun for me was during the Armada tournament. I think just because we knew a lot of you guys, and that was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. We got Downside with this. We had Kravik there, you guys. I think that was the content creator.
Chivalry is there. He's got a YouTube.
Yeah.
Henry.
Yeah.
I was going to mention it, but I just didn't know how to pronounce his name. So.
I don't think I'm pronouncing it. I'm not sure I'm doing it right either. But
Henry, I think Henry's his name.
Yeah,
Henry. I can go with Henry. Yes.
So, yeah, it was. I didn't get a chance to check out much of the con itself, but the Armada tournament was great.
Yeah, that's actually one of the downsides of playing in the Armada tournament because it's such an all-day event. So we'll talk about the event a little bit. There were 31 players that actually showed up to play the event, which is kind of on the low end of what I wanted to expect. I was wanting at least 40 players to be there. So we ended up just playing 3 rounds and then top 8 cut to play another 3 rounds on day 2, which ended up being fine. I would have liked the other game, but not having to play that other game going into the late hours of the night was actually kind of nice because we had to start the next morning at 7 o'clock because we had a hard out per GenCon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that even X-Wing and Legion had a proportionally small population. So I think all 3 games reduced the same amount just because of the con restrictions and COVID and all that stuff. So
yeah,
it's still it was a good population. We had a lot of players from lower to higher skill, and then a big diversity of locations. I met people from Nebraska, Texas. People came out from Virginia, which was nice, diversified. Got to see other people's fleets, the metas there.
I will say I was pleasantly surprised that there were at least 2 or 3 very new players, which I did not expect. Have less than 20 games under their belt kind of new players. So that was great that they're coming out to a con. I think you may get that at a Gen Con, maybe more than other tournaments, just because people are there to play other games. I met a great guy, my second game, he was there from Texas. He was a very new player, but he was there to play an Axis and Allies tournament. And so we were talking about that, and that sounded really cool. And I might try that next year. If
talk about a long tournament. I was talking about our tournament being long. I can't imagine how long an Axis and Allies tournament would take.
There was a 3-day Twilight Imperium tournament, and that talk about a long tournament. 3 days straight of Twilight Imperium. My mind would be jelly at that point.
Hopefully you really like the people that you're playing with in that game. Yeah, no, I met people from around everywhere. It's a challenge when you get recognized by people, but you're still like really focused in on a game. So it's like, how do I not be rude to you, but I really need to focus at the same time? So that's a balancing act that I've never really had to do before, and something I'm still trying to figure out. So it was great meeting so many people from so many different places, and like Garrett said, there's people from all over the place that we ended up playing.
I will say I didn't notice any international players. Like with Adepticon, we had a ton of Canadians who came down. Indianapolis is just a little bit harder to get to if you're international, and so I do think, at least in 2019, I feel like we had a couple, but maybe I'm just making that up. But there's usually a Michigan crew that comes down, and none of the Michigan people came down this year. And it's just a little bit more expensive and harder to kind of make work this year, I think.
I would agree with that. GenCon as a whole was actually down this year from what they were historically, because historically GenCon typically is around 75,000 people, I believe, and this year there was only like 55,000 people, which is still a lot of people, but that's a significant drop in population as a whole, and I think that's just part of the world that we're living in right now, coming out of the pandemic. We're still in it, but like starting to emerge from it, and also like the economy's bad and everything at Gen Con's super expensive.
Well, I think
tickets are expensive.
Yeah, I think
compared to like just going to a more smaller venue, if you would.
Well, yeah, it's a Gen Con ticket to Saturday itself was like $95, right? And
yeah,
and so then you have an event ticket of $30 on top of it. So you're talking about $120 to go play Armada, like 3 rounds of Armada.
That's
like
just getting the door, right?
Right.
No
That's
hotel,
pretty much
transportation, no food. Yeah.
So it's unfortunately, it's just an expensive con to go to.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the players that did show up. So I pulled some stats. Hopefully I counted it right. It was me just like making jots on a piece of paper when I pulled these stats. So I'll talk about the different fleet, like what factions were there. So there were 31 players, and there were 14 Imperial players, 11 Rebel players, 4 GAR players, and 2 CIS players, and hopefully that adds up to 31. But I think that's kind of like the normal amount of each faction that we've seen. What's your guys' opinion on that?
I got the general feeling that based on other cons and looking at what we have in some of the online tournaments, the percentages seem to be similar. At least that was my impression. I think it's going to be interesting when we talk about who wound up getting into the top 8, what the distribution there was. But I know we've said this before a couple times on Command Stack, where you have your 2 main factions, Imperial and Rebel. They've been out long enough. They have the strategic squadrons where GAR and CIS do not. So you're just going to see more of them, given we've been around a while longer. I still hold on to the fact that I do believe you can do really well with CIS and GAR. You just have to be prepared for a lot of the different things that could come at you and be a negative.
I would agree.
Well said, Garrett.
Republic represents.
Yeah. Well, I just to touch on, I agree with Ken. Well said. Those numbers did not surprise me. They seem very in line. I think Armada players are going to play what they know. I think at a tournament, and I think that certainly goes for us as well. So I think it's just going to take time, but those numbers are. Keep that in mind when we think about who won, or top 8, or we start looking at those kind of numbers too. Like sometimes it's just who plays and the number of people who are playing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The fact that the GAR and CS are still an incomplete faction, I think, has a lot to do with that. And the fact that this is a major tournament, like historically, if you look at what FFG used to call them, this was the North American Grand Championship, I believe. So this was like one of like 3 of the biggest events that would take place in the North American region / America. So when you come to a major tournament, you want a fleet that you actually can do well with. And a lot of times that would be whatever people practice and have played the most. And because Rebel and Imperial have been out since the beginning, people are way more comfortable flying them at a higher level. And I think that's just part of what the numbers represent. Until people get way more familiar with like Republic and the CIS, and they can start emerging into it. And you can see that when we talk about where those types of fleets place, like for how low of like Republic and CIS fleets are there, they actually have a pretty decent representation in the top 50%, top 10, top 8, which made the cut.
And I don't know if you're going there, John, but we had a really nice diversity of admirals, I thought. Just like, we mostly Imperial Rebel players, but like quite a different style of fleets, quite a bit.
Yeah, that was actually what I was going to bring up next. So we had 31 players and 15 different commanders. Which
Really? We had 15 different commanders?
15 different commanders. Wow. When I was doing the numbers, I'm like, this isn't right. But like every single fleet I went through had a different commander, which I think actually says a lot for where the game is right now.
That's
People
great.
are trying to figure things out and figure out how to counter the other commanders. But I was blown away by that.
What was the most taken commander? Probably a Gaten Ramadi?
Funny you asked that, because I have that information. So I'll just go through each of the factions and list
Ken
the
just
commanders.
lobbing softballs here for John to knock out of the park.
Yeah, I'm like, throw me an easy
Set
one.
you up.
Ooh.
We'll
Okay,
keep the hard ones for later, John.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Okay, so the CIS had 2 commanders. They only had 2 fleets, and they're pretty much who you would expect. There's 1 Mark II fleet and 1 Kraken fleet. So anytime you can adjust your dice, it's a good thing. And I honestly do not think there is a bad commander besides Trench for the CIS, but that's my opinion. Then for the Republic, we have actually only 2 commanders. And I was actually kind of surprised at which commanders they were. We had 1 Luminara fleet, and we had 3 Admiral Tarkin fleets. So I know Garrett can talk about the Admiral Tarkin take.
Yeah.
So we'll be hearing about his list later. So those are the 2. And then for the Imperials, we have 1 player that played Moff Jerjerrod, 2 players that played Thrawn, 2 players that played Mati, 3 players that plays Ramadi, 3 players that played Sloan, and then because we had a lot of people from Chicago there, we had 3 players that played Ozzel.
The Ozzel meta.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly,
that's-
Chicago's an Ozzel meta. I think
That's
all 3
really
players
good
came from them.
diversity for the Imperials.
Yeah, I mean, all
Yeah.
those admirals, like Imperial admirals, like they're all good, right? They all like do, they all give you value to your fleet in the game. None of them are tagged, none of them are Emperor Palpatine. Like they're all, C tier and above type admirals. Amati's probably the worst, but like he still gives you value to your fleet. Like they're all good. They're all useful. Useful might be the best word. They're all useful.
Yeah, I can see it as typically when you're doing an Imperial fleet, you have, if you're Squadron, you're either Sloan or Thrawn. And I think that's what we saw there. And then if you're MSU or you just don't want to do Navigate, you take Ozzel. And then the rest of them, Ramadi is like, I want to shoot you and be obstructed, which is great for things like Arca 10 lines. I think that's what Kravik was running. And then Mati's like, I would like my Star Destroyers. I would like to take 2 of them, please, and I'd like them not to die. And then Jerry's one of my favorite, and he goes on pretty much any fleet just because you can fly better. Like, all of these commanders are very good, and none of them are like, this is the best commander here. I think commander-wise, the Imperials were very well represented.
I'm going to say it right now. Next tournament, I'm bringing Grand Moff Tarkin because I'm going to bring him back. I've been
Let's
trying
do
to
it.
make him work for 5 years.
Slicer tools Tarkin. You take your engineering first turn, you take 2 slicer tools, you just cause some havoc.
You could do that.
Tarkin's useful though. Like he's still useful. I like it. I support it, Ken. We'll workshop it.
I'll actually talk about that when I talk about my fleet, because Tarkin's one of the things I have to worry about, oddly enough. Okay, so then let's jump into Rebels. Rebels had a lot of different commanders. They have 1 Maydeen, 2 Kraken, 2 Radis, 2 Akbar, and then, to no one's surprise whatsoever, the most represented commander in the entire group was a Gate with 4.
4.
Dirty Gate players.
Yeah, I said it was broken. I don't know why I took it. Yeah. So, yeah.
But even then, like I think like at Adepticon, there were like 9 agates. We had more people, but like I think there were like 9 of the 13 Rebel Admirals or something at Adepticon were agate. It was some astounding percentage. So even here, we have a nice diversity.
Yeah. Like what I was saying, like when I was running the numbers, this is what surprised me the most about all the lists. Actually, this wasn't what surprised me the most. I'll get to that in 1 second. But like the variety of commanders, it was just, I did not expect it at all. And I think that says something about how the meta is shifting and trying to evolve into being what's counter to other things. So what did surprise me the most is that out of all the lists, there were 100% more Izard cards used than I ever thought were going to be used.
Wait, what?
There's an Izard?
Really?
Yeah, one person brought Izard. And
Oh,
if you're
no.
listening to this isn't me making fun of you. This is just me. I did not expect it. So he said that he wanted to know what the Agate Starhawk fleets were running for their commands. And I kind of can understand that, like if you're a squadron fleet, because if you look at the different styles of Agate, you have like you have the Hate Hawks, you have the Farm Hawks, you have then like the Biggs Ball Hawks. So if you're running a Biggs Ball, you kind of want to know when the Biggs Ball is going to be doing a squadron. But yeah, so he brought that just to see what the Starhawks had as their command stack. I'm like, okay, well, here's a little thing. You can save 3 points. It's nav engineering. Or sometimes we get a little spicy and we go nav engineering.
Yeah, and that's just a rep thing. Like whatever. It's not. It's. I don't have any problem with that. Like fine. Like you take Izard, fine.
I wish Izard was good.
Yeah.
Like we should do a whole episode on how to make Izard fun, and I honestly think it has to do with guessing dials before they get flipped. I think that would be a fun mechanic.
I think lore-wise, she was so important in Legends. I think it should be something cool, like discard Izard to change the top command dial on one ship.
I would actually be pretty fine with that.
With a token. Awesome. I don't know, burn a token or something immediately.
Yeah, and no distance restriction,
Yeah.
No distance. Something, she needs to be reworked, right? But I don't know.
It was from a
How about if you can guess what the command is, you immediately win.
No. Slicer tool and then
Too far.
immediately win.
Too far.
It's the infinite combo. No, I was thinking maybe like put it into like the raid shenanigans. Like if you could guess what their dial is, you can then issue that player a raid, and you have to have like a refresh cost for it or something, like a Confire or Squadron or something like that. I think that would be fun. So
I actually played Joshua. He had Izard in his fleet.
Oh, you got to face him.
I got to play him in my second round. And actually what I found interesting was how little he did use Izard, but he used it in an interesting way that I was not expecting. So when Izard was used, I think 2 times, maybe 3, against me, it was always to find out where the MC-30 is going to be activating squadrons. He was just assuming that my Gazantes were. And I think part of that was for him to try and figure out which ship to shoot at against my Kraken fleet.
So he would use it to see and predict where his squadron should be focused first, depending on what was in or out of range for squadron activation then?
That's kind of my assessment of what he was trying to do. Might be a way for him to select his targets, like rather than go after a Gazanti, if this ship is going to activate squadrons, can I do enough to prevent it from happening? But he completely ignored using Izard on the Gazantis, probably because he figured it was going to be squadrons.
Interesting. I've been trying to come up with a list that I can make it work. I haven't yet. So
It's okay. I'm gonna shut this down. I appreciate that Joshua did it. It's nice. I understand how you can go and use want to make a card work, right? Like I get that. I'm the only person who flies Han Solo because I love him. He's the best. He's the best Squadron. You'll never convince me otherwise. Okay, he's A tier, S tier, Omega tier, but Izard is not optimal. That's the harshest I'll say. He's not optimal.
Yeah. So speaking of squadrons, and what is the top tier, we also have the breakdown of what type of squadrons were flown at this list or at this thing. So there were 5 lists that brought 0 squadrons. There were 6 lists that brought less than 50 points of squadrons. There were 8 lists that brought between 100 and 50 points of squadrons. And then there were 12 lists that brought 100 points plus squadrons. So I think that's what we've seen a lot of recently too, is that squadrons are back. For a while before everything shut down, I felt like we were moving a lot into like you either had Sloan or you're running squad lists. And I feel like the medium squad bubble is finally kind of emerging. Because if you look at it, there are 14 lists that have between some squadrons and 100 points of squadrons, and 12 lists that have 100 plus points of squadrons. What's your guys' take on that?
Unmute. Oh, there we go. So I flew squadless, right? Because I had 2 Venators, 2 Peltas. And obviously I was terrified of Sloanless because that could wreck my day hard. I faced one in the first round and just, didn't engage until late so that he didn't have time to overheat all my tokens. But in the other rounds, it depends on your fleet and how you can mitigate the damage coming in. Extra shield techs, in my case, projection experts. So whatever 2 or 3 damage I'd come through, it would go away the next round or at the end of the round. But I think they're devastating against anything that can't mitigate the damage. So, and then when I flew against the Hawks, they both had their 134 monsters with Lando just yeehaw as 2 automatic damage that I can't fix. And that did, it's impact. It's a lot. It's like, it's basically taking shots from another ship. And I think overall in a tournament space, if you have squads, you're going to have an advantage over people who don't have squads, even if their list has, double flak like mine does. Like no matter what, they're going to overheat you. And there's not a lot of, you could tool against the squads, but then all those tools you're using to fight the squads are going to replace everything that's going to help you not get, 6 or 7 damage coming through from their ship shooting at you. So I'm full squad support. I liked running not squads because I think it's easier to fly, obviously, but it's dangerous. It's very risky to not bring squads, and you got to be ready to somehow mitigate that damage that's going to be coming through.
How many fleets were between 50 and 100, John?
50 to 100 had 8.
8. So that's a pretty good medium squad ball size. 8 people. I was at 107 with mine, so it's just out of there, but still this kind of the same. I think people are getting more comfortable with those medium sized squad balls, and I think squads are still powerful, but they've been somewhat neutered by PDIC. And so PDIC is very controversial in the community. Some people hate it, some people love it. I'm okay with it because it's kind of depowered the squad game a little bit. So you can have people run lighter squads. And so what I would be interested to know is that of the 134 squadrons that got run, what significant or what portion were the double die bombers or the real damage dealers, and then what portion of that 134 was anti-squad. I'd be really interested to kind of. It's too difficult to know that, but your list, John, you were in 134, right?
I did.
So what is it all just kind of multi-role because Rebels are kind of the best multi-role squadrons, or?
I had all Rogue and 2 VCXs. So
Okay.
my Squadron ball is like the classic Lando because he's great at throwing that and killing off flotillas and with 8R. I have Shara to lock people down. I have 4 YT-2400s, and then I have 2 VCXs. And the 4 YT-2400s, 4 blue dice, are really good at killing off squadrons. They're speed 4 rogue, and then the black dice against ships because, it's still 75% when I re-roll it non-bomber.
Yeah,
So,
that's the scary ball, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
multi-role. I do everything kind of.
Yeah.
And that's a scary squadron. But PDICs can help a little bit to kind of mitigate and slow it down a little bit.
my opponents didn't need to use their PDICs because my dice were terrible. Yeah, so I would have to go back and look at all that, but for the most part, we saw a lot of squad balls like I had. I don't know how many big balls were in it. I didn't have enough time to do that deep dive. I know there was a lot of Imperial heavy squadron games, and they have really leaned into all rogue balls. I know that's what Nick was flying, and he got second place. His rogue ball is insanely powerful. And then we also had a couple Sloan lists there, and Sloan is typically, your TIE interceptors and things like that with some aces. I think what we're moving into right now is this weird stage because of the game switching companies, because of the pandemic. The meta never actually evolved after Wave 8 because there was only, I think, 2 regionals that took place after the Starhawk and Onagar. Only
Louisville was one of them. Louisville was one of them.
Okay, because I know the Chicago one that Ken went to that I wasn't able to also had it. And I think we're moving into, we're just going backwards in time until that 2019, 2020, and then we're going to start over and move forward. And I feel that's what we are, because I think Nathan Coda won the Chicago one, and he had a Hate Hawk with, at the time, because there wasn't the Squadron ace limit, he had this ridiculously powerful Hera passing out rogue Rebel ace ball, which 1.5 now has changed a lot. So we're seeing the 4 ace limit, and I think that's why the medium squad balls are going to be more prevalent, because you're not going to be facing the Imperial Hateful Eight or anything like
8 scatter aces. It's just. Yeah, I am. That's one change that I am very glad was made. I know that's controversial too, but I like it. I think it's more interesting. More interesting.
I'm really trying to forget that Nathan Coda list because I was the lucky guy to be paired with him in round 1. That was fun. Probably more for him than me.
Nathan Coda. There's only one thing that's ever said about him by the community. I've never been beaten so badly by someone that's so nice. And I think that says a lot about who he is as an Armada player and as a person. But
world champion for people who don't know, world champion 2018.
Yeah. And runner up to multiple times. He's amazing with playing. I haven't heard from him recently, so I hope everything's good with him and his family. So I think that's most of the highlighted stuff that I wanted to cover about breaking it down. What did you guys expect to see the meta here being? And was that what you actually saw?
I saw less onagers than I thought I'd see, but
Yeah.
I saw the right amount of Starhawks that I'd see.
There weren't many onagers, and I don't think there. I think we counted 4 total in the whole tournament.
Yes.
And I'm
so
not
there
sure.
There were 4 total onagers in the whole tournament. None of them doubled up. There were 3 Starhawks in the whole tournament. And when I look through the list, what I would consider kind of true-ish MSU, I want to say there was roughly 5-ish lists that I would say would be true MSU. But that was, again, a quick pass through.
Do you think that we didn't see as many onagers because of community peer pressure or because of people's boredom with them?
I honestly don't know. It could be both. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, only speaking personally, I was not going to fly, bring an onager to fly. Because I can only speak really for myself, I guess. So that's me.
I know I was working on an onager list. John, you and I were playing with that a couple times off camera. I got to points where I just said, this is not my style of play. And that's why I didn't bring it. Although in retrospect, maybe I should have. I might have placed a little bit better. But nonetheless, I think part of it is, and Garrett, maybe you've hit kind of a nail on the head to an extent. I don't know. I would love to see what the comments for this video or recording would be. But perhaps there is kind of a negative stigma from if you have an onager, you're blowing things up across the table, kind of an ordeal.
Yeah. I also feel that this is back what I was saying, like right when the onager and the Starhawk came out, basically everything shut down. So we haven't really had real life tournaments to get it out there. And when we first started back up, the onagers were very much so completely controlling everything that was in the tournament play. And I think a lot of that had to do with people did not realize yet how to fly against it. I know this is something that a lot of people have said, but you can easily fly against one of them. I think double onager is still really, really scary. And that's one of the things that I was most worried about running into, because my Starhawk will melt to, double onager intel officer. I just won't have any tokens and be dead on turn 2. But I think for the most part, like, people have moved to faster ships. I can dodge arcs. You have Patriot Fists that can dodge arcs. You have Rebels that are running all their silly MC-30s and CR-90s that can get around arcs. Like, there's very maneuverable fleets that can dodge the arc. So that's why I think we see less of them, is because when I played an onager at a tournament, just because they wanted someone to play an onager to practice against, I was doing like the damage calculations in my head, and I'm like, if I don't get this shot, like I only get like 4 good shots the entire game. If they're able to avoid one of them, I won't be able to kill what I need to. And having that arc, you have to be able to force them into an area that you can shoot them. And if the player decides, I don't want to be in that area, so you can't shoot me, there's really not much that you can do about it.
I'll say I think most people were ready for the onager, or in terms of a countering standpoint. And I think some people are like, all right, well, if people are countering onagers, I need to respond and be the next kind of a mind game in that sense. If onagers are strong, there's no doubt, but if everyone's going to tech against it, maybe that's not the right ship to bring for this meta cycle.
I'd agree. Okay, do we want to go over our list and what we played?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so let's see. Let's start first with Ken. Let's go over your fleet first.
That sounds like a great idea. So we're going to be in top 30 here. So I brought my another evolution of my Kraken fleet, which I've already changed on the way back home from Indianapolis. John pulled out his phone. He was going through, I know what I'm going to bring to Worlds. And then we started talking about what I'm going to do with Kraken. So Kraken's on a CR-90A with expert shield tech and turbo laser reroute circuits. I have 2 MC-30 torpedo frigates. The first one has Durlin, ordnance experts, advanced projectors, and external racks. And the second one, exact same loadout, except that instead of Major Durlin, I have Lando Calrissian on it. And you'll notice there's no titles on this, and I'm going to get back to that in a second. I have 2 GR-75s. The first one has Torn Far, boosted comms, and the Bright Hope title. The second one has munitions resupply and boosted comms. I have a small squadron contingent. It's kind of where we were talking earlier about the medium, large, and the small, or like no squadrons. So 94 points of squadrons. I have Harris and Dula in an X-Wing, Biggs, and then 4 generic X-Wing squadrons. So in prior iterations of my Kraken build, I had Jan Ors in here, and I decided I think Hera was the piece that was missing. So when I go on a bombing run, I actually have the opportunity to potentially re-roll once or twice in my bombing. And frankly, that wound up working out well. I did get an extra die here and there in terms of any kind of bombing run. Didn't get a lot of them, but I got a few shots into the ships. The downside is the X-Wings disappeared a lot faster because I just couldn't get those Jan tokens. And, you know, when you're moving 2 or 3 damage points around versus 5 or 6, that makes a huge difference. And X-Wings just evaporate quickly. The MC30s, this was probably the most significant change to my list, is that I had Admo on one of them. I had Foresight on the other one. And there was a game that John and I played that actually was just released this past Friday. And I think, John, you made mention, your Backseat Admiral, that you think this is where I decided maybe titles are not the best solution for MC30s. And I actually, in my notes for that episode, wrote down, do we really need titles for MC30s? What I was really finding was once an MC30 kind of loses its shield or you blow through one section of it, you're going to have 3 shields on the opposite side you really don't get to use. And if you don't get another activation with an engineering command to move them over, your ship is toast. MC30s are glass cannons. So what I found was if you put advanced projectors on it, you've pretty much got 10 points of shields plus another 4 of hull before that MC30 goes up. In my case, I only get 3 because you know I'm going to pull a structural damage. But the point is, they actually lasted longer, and I think with one exception, I did not lose an MC30 throughout the tournament. So I think in the case of no titles and using the advanced projectors, for me anyways, it felt like that worked out really well.
What were the objectives that you were flying in this fleet?
So this fleet, I had precision strike, fighter ambush, and dangerous territory. Precision strike, obviously, because I wanted to be able to use the bomber capability on it. Fighter ambush was one of those, if they pick it, maybe I can get an opportunity to do something with my fighters and get a couple points scored in there. Dangerous territory, similar thing. When I just run around, I don't have to worry about obstacles at all, yet the opponent will score a couple quick points. The idea there, just get 15 extra points as a bonus, and then give me an opportunity to potentially do a little bit better, get a 7-4 or an 8-3. Didn't actually happen, though. I wound up being first player in every match.
Was that because of bids, or everyone you met had like a more than a bid than you, or just heavy bids? I noticed that a lot.
It was a combination of both. So my first game, I was so incredibly lucky to get to face John, because if we're going to drive 190 miles away from home, spend 3 hours in the car talking about what we're going to do with our lists, we want to play each other, right? I think my one regret there, John, is that we didn't put the camera up and just record. So next time. So in John's case, I was outbid. I think Joshua wound up outbidding me. And my third game, I think I actually had the bid. One of them, I got a choice, and I just looked at the opposing fleet and said, I really want to go first. Just get myself in the position to be able to strike, attack, and be done. So for me, it was kind of one of those, with a 3-point bid, maybe I'll go first, maybe not. Really dependent on what I was going to look at. And the fleets where I really wanted to go second, like against John, I didn't have the bid to pull it off. So I have enough there to kind of combat someone that's got a small 1 or 2 point bid. And if they really want to go first, fine, here's my objectives, choose your pain. But in my case, I was more or less geared to go first and make that initial strike with the bombers.
What would you say is your strongest aspect of this list and the weakest aspect of this list?
Well, it's me, so the weakest aspect is clearly my squadron play. But we've talked about that in the past. I think really here, the issue I had is I faced either fleets that had more squadrons capable of taking out my squadron ball, at which point it was a free 94 points, and maybe I'd get 30 or 40 back. So that definitely hurt me. The GR75s were there. They usually someone just got a little close in to take them out, or in some cases, John, I think you took out one of my GR75s. Your YT2400 Rogues came in after polishing the X-Wings, and you got another 30 free points. The stronger part was definitely the MC30s. They were a lot harder to destroy. I had a few that were let down to 1 or 2 hull left with absolutely no shields whatsoever. And I played a second game on day 2, which we could talk about in another episode, but I actually had one of the MC30s. Martuk had to take a die away, wound up working out to my advantage. So again, advanced projectors had an unforeseen ability and additional capability that I wasn't expecting.
How were your black dice? Like, were you able, because that's the thing in the meta, right? Like, black dice or ships are struggling. They're hard to get on target. Were you able to get the black dice on target?
No. In almost every case, the PDICs hurt. And this is one of the reasons that I was running external racks as opposed to assault proton torpedoes or assault concussion missiles, just to get the extra 2 dice in, get a Confire. This is what munitions resupply did, as well as throwing that extra token so I get an extra reroll. So between ordnance experts and everything else, I theoretically should have been able to roll up 7 or 8 damage points. Problem that I ran into, my blue dice didn't roll any accuracies. So in most cases, either if I did roll an accuracy, ECM wound up taking away my ability to stop the brace, and I did half damage. In the case of the game with John with expert shield techs, I would do 2, maybe 3 total damage on a massive strike. And my fleet, this is again another one of the weaknesses to it, is with 2 MC30s, I get 1 turn where I have an opportunity to do some significant damage out the sides. And if I can coordinate both, theoretically, yeah, I could do like 20 some odd points of damage to you. And then the next set of attacks, I might do 5, 6 tops. So I really am a 1 strike type of a fleet, and then I run. And this is why I'm seriously considering swapping out the squadrons for another MC30, because if I have 3 of them coming in doing that kind of damage to you, I probably could take a Starhawk out in 1 turn if I needed to. But then again, I'm probably going to lose one of the MC30s having 3 right there.
Was there anything that really stood out about any of the games that you played, or any interesting combinations across the 3?
Not really, not at least not in the tournament play. I think the one thing I found was, and again, this goes back to my squadron ball just really didn't do anything for me. It was 25% of my fleet, which was effectively, here, take 94 points and give me 30. And it was almost in every game a 60-point loss. So I felt like with every game I started, I was already at a 5-6 loss before the game began. And my blue dice, even with Torin and with Hera, were atrocious. My red dice, when I got a chance to run bombing attacks, were great until PDIC made me re-roll them. Black dice actually did well. Blue, horrible for me, which I think is kind of normal, but I just wasn't getting accuracies. Re-rolls weren't helping out. So I felt like every game, it's like I'm already starting at 60 points down.
Okay. Any final thoughts on Ken's fleet or anything like that, guys? Then we'll move on to the next one.
I do have one, and it's just, I know people don't always like suggestions or maybe feedback on the fleet, but I've been.
Oh, do it. I'm all for it.
That you said your squadron ball was 97, 94 points, or
94 points.
94 points. Okay, so I've been playing around with an idea of basically Hera and Red Squadron. So like Hera, Luke, Wedge, and Biggs. And so you don't have Jan, but they all have braces anyway. And then add in a YT 1300, and that's exactly 94 points. And you still have the Jan effect, I guess, of like everyone's got braces. And so it's, I haven't gotten it on the table, but I think that might be a little sturdier for your fleet. Sorry to
no, actually that's okay.
That,
I actually pilot tested that a couple times at the local store, and what I wound up finding was my Luke shots never got an opportunity to make its bomb, and Wedge was great. I'd take out a squadron here, take a squadron out there, and I would still lose most of my fighters anyways, just
Yeah.
given the amount of damage they were taking. So I felt in this case, just given the fact that I could bring 6 squadrons instead of 5 in, I'd have a better opportunity of maybe scoring something on that bombing hit.
Gotcha.
But a good suggestion, definitely something.
It's something I want to get
trying
on the
more.
table. You know, something
Yeah.
I've been kicking around.
So let's jump over to Ryan's list now.
Okay, how? I guess I'll just go through my fleet. I flew Radis again. I flew Radis at Adepticon, but I changed it up pretty dramatically from what I had. I decided that I hate GR-75s. I discovered they do not shoot ships. They don't shoot. So I decided we're gonna get rid of all of that. We're only gonna take things that shoot. I know they can flak, once they get in black dice range, but I decided no GR-75s. I did it. I decided to make a meta call, and that was I wanted to beat Agate. I like Armada as a puzzle, and I like to fly counter meta stuff is try to solve the puzzle. So I thought my Adepticon list was trying to solve Onagers. This list was trying to solve Agate, and so I decided, what does Agate not like? She does not like not having defense tokens. And so I worked for a while to figure out how to do that. And so I came up with a trick. And my fleet is just a one-trick pony. It's very straightforward, very simple. It has its vulnerabilities, but it's a flagship of a CR-90 with Jaina's Light, a CR-90A with Jaina's Light with Radis on it. Tauren. And I put Tauren on there for 2 reasons. One, for squad help. And I'll get to the other reason shortly. ECM, because it's my only ship. I just needed it to be a little sturdier. Even then, I was still worried about it going down turn 1. And then TRCs, which I have not really flown that in a while, and it gave some nice supplemental punch. And then I dropped the big hammer of a MC-75 armored cruiser, which I know a lot of people think is like one of the worst rebel ships. So I kind of wanted to make that work too. It's not really well regarded ship, but I put Profundity on that so I could drop a ship. I put Lando Officer on there because I think Lando Officer is essential in an Intel Officer world. I don't know. I had another example of it, I forgot, but he's just really, in this layered reroll world of like, I have 12 rerolls with Vader and whatever veteran gunners, and I'll give 12 damage. He's really great at turning, doubles into single hits. So, and then the big ticket was boarding troopers, which is, the best 3 points I've ever spent. PDIC, XRAX, and QBTs. And so I have no dice correction on that ship. I am at mercy of the dice gods, but I can potentially throw a lot of dice with that ship. And then the trick is I drop a CR-90B out of Profundity. It's got Hondo, and it's got Overload Pulse, which you don't see. People don't bring Overload Pulse. It's overlooked. And the reason is because it's not that good to take on big ships, but it's pretty potent on little ships. And so my whole trick is I drop Radis in front of your big ship. I'll drop the CR-90B. It'll activate first. It'll roll 6 blue dice. This is what I got. And so Hondo will give it a token to reroll, and then hopefully I get 2 Tauren Far rerolls. And when I line it up correctly, and I hit the Overload Pulse every single time. So if you're, an Agate Assault Frigate or Agate Starhawk, all 5 of your tokens are getting exhausted. And so I don't really care if it does much damage from it. All your defense tokens are spent. So I'll shoot that. I'll follow up with the MC-75, and I will activate boarding troopers, which will then delete both of your braces and one of your redirects. And then all of a sudden you have a very fragile ship. And then here's 12 dice. And then I'm first player. So then after that 12 dice, you've spent the last of your tokens. I'll activate first the next round, and here's 12 more dice without any tokens. And so that's kind of where I am. I had a squad ball just to kind of keep some fighter coverage, but also to take advantage of fleets that didn't have any fighter coverage. So I had Han, who's my all-time favorite squadron. He's best. He killed a Star Destroyer this tournament, so I don't think he should be 150 points, but that's what Han is. And then Char Tycho, and then 3 YT 2400s. And that's my fleet. 13-point bid.
I think you were tied for the highest point bid in the tournament, right?
Yeah, we actually, Jason and I played each other. He had the other highest bid, so we rolled off at 13 points to see who would go first or second.
Yeah. What objectives did you bring with us?
I took most wanted, fighter ambush, and superior positions, and I did it for a very specific reason. I was also not only teching against Agate as first player, but I wanted to tech against Sam's list. If anyone remembers from episode 1, Sam's list was the Speed 0 Interdictor Onager list. And so I brought fighter ambush and superior positions and most wanted because I would take second against that list, against Sam's list, and I hope those objectives would hammer him. I'll hammer the list, not him. But and then also
We do not condone violence against
I was
other
not.
folks.
Yeah, this is Armada. I also was teching against a Dooku list that has been floating around out there in the community, which is a very second player heavy. So if I saw a Dooku list, I did not want to have to go first against it. So those are my considerations.
Yep. I think that's all good. So let's talk about how your matches went.
All right, so my first match, I flew against 2 Akbar MC30s and got the drop. The overload pulse boarding trooper thing worked. But he this was the first game I ever put this fleet on the table against another opponent. I had kind of, in my basement, as you can see in the background, put it on the table. Or played it a couple times online, but this is the first time. So I lost my flagship, and I found out how fragile a 93 and how costly a 93-point CR90 is, which is definitely a weak point in the list. So I lost that, but so I lost 5-6, and then I played the Axis and Allies player Drew, who was a nice guy, but he was a very new player, and so I got a 10-1 against his Sloan list. And then my last game, I played Nick Griffiths, who's you guys know from Chicago, maybe. He's down in Louisville now, and so he beat me by 20 MOV.
Oh no!
He beat me by 20
so
MOV,
close.
and we played a tough game. This was the game where Han killed a Star Destroyer at the top of a turn, which was awesome. Which is just like, I live for that. And then so that was another. So I went 5-10-5. But even though Nick beat me in that game, I still had enough MOV left over that we tied on tournament points, but I snuck in at 8 and he was right below me at 9. So I felt kind of bad about that. Despite beating me, I snuck in. So I got I snuck in at 8th at Adepticon and snuck in 8th at GenCon too.
By the skin of your teeth every time.
Yeah.
Nick is he's a really good player. And he was one of the people that started the whole 2-ship craze. And he did it, I think, before he actually had Price. He was running like a weird Quasar 2-ship type of list, and he had like some rogues in there. He had a very, very unique squadron ball at the time that no one else was flying, and even when people copied it, like he had Boba Fett. Like no one runs Boba Fett. No one ran Boba Fett then, and no one definitely runs Boba Fett now. He had like a really cool list. So
yeah, if you Nick is very slow to, and Nick knows this. He's very slow to change, and so he's got if you see him across the table, you can probably guess what his fleet is going to be. But he's got I love it because he flies Vader in a TIE Advanced, which no one does anymore. But that's what he likes flying, and as a person who flies Han Solo, I can relate.
That's funny. So those were your day 1 matchups. Do we want to go into day 2 and just talk about how your fleet did in day 2?
Yeah, I'll do it real quick.
That for the next episode. Let's just do like a quick overview, just so.
I'll do maybe like one game highlight, or
sure.
I don't know. We don't have to do that. I don't know what you guys want to do.
Yeah, let's just talk about if there's anything that you thought was super interesting
Sure.
that took place.
So I
Just a
didn't.
highlight.
If you've been listening, I haven't faced Agate yet, and so made it to the top 8. I built this fleet to take on Agate, and I haven't gotten to really test it. So my first game, I played Nick, who ended up finishing second, and he beat me I beat him by 1 MOV.
Man, you like keeping it so close.
What? Yeah.
You and your close games, Ryan, and this just squeaking in the top.
And it was a great game. We threw a lot of dice. It was really great. It was had a blast. It was 185 to 184. So I felt really good. And then I played Jason, who beat the stuffing out of me. One of the weaknesses of my list is an MSU list, and I think MSU is coming around, and he flew it extremely well. Akbar CR90s are scary, and I did a very poor job of placing rocks to kind of disrupt. Like TRC 90s with Akbar are not great if you can block them, because if you take away the red, they can't shoot you. And I did a very poor job of that, and then I had a bad drop, and on top of Jason flying it extremely well, I lost 8-3. So I came into the last game a little bit on tilt, and I'm like, you know what, I got to go for it. And so I finally got my Starhawk matchup, and it was against a guy, Ruben, who's a great guy from Lexington, who I was rooming with, along with Garrett. So we had talked about this as well. I was like, I kind of been talking all through the weekend. I was like, I'm ready to take on a Starhawk, and so he flew a version of, Starhawk 134, and I knew what to do. He kind of knew what I was going to do. It was. Like I said, I'm a one-trick pony, and he tried to block with squads, the drop. Did a pretty good job. I got a suboptimal drop, but it was enough to do the damage. I got rolled with my CR90. I rolled my front arc at him with 4 blues because I concentrated fire. Didn't get a crit for the overload pulse, and then so I only had 2 more dice, and so I rolled the 2 dice. Got 1 crit, and it blew up the tokens. MC75 activated, blew off the braces and a redirect, threw a bunch of dice, and by the top of turn 4 when I activated, the Starhawk was gone. And it was, I said on this podcast before, there's nothing more fun than blowing up onagers, but blowing up a Starhawk might be more fun than blowing up onagers. So.
Now, if you could just blow that Starhawk up with Han Solo, that would probably be the icing.
I would have quit at that point. I would have quit, and that would have been amazing. They were right.
That would have been peak.
So that's super exciting that you were able to actually face the list that you teched against. A lot of times you tech against something in a tournament, and then it's like 50% of the tournament's that, and you won't even see a single person that has it. So.
Yep. It took me 6 games, but I finally got there, and so it was a great feeling. I do want to talk about Han Solo though, because he's MVP of the list, of course. He's underrated because you can just hop him on rocks, shoot, and you can move out. He's got grit. You get what I call double tapped Han, which is, with my list, if they don't have any, by the time he's shooting at you, they don't have any tokens left. So what he's throwing is a blue and a black, and he can also activate at the top of the round. So he's going to throw 4 dice at you without any tokens. So it's potentially 4 dice straight to the hull. It's not going to be 4 damage, but it's probably like 2 or 3 damage. So it's just something to consider if you were thinking about picking up Han.
Honestly, I really, really like Han, except the fact that they both fly the Millennium Falcon. So it's a really hard choice for me for double tapping with Lando and Adar versus taking Han Solo. If I could take both of them in a list, I would 100% do that.
Right. Yep.
That would be
Han is just so much more survivable than Lando. Lando is just going to die. That's my experience with him.
He also doesn't do anything unless you feed him a token. That's my experience with him. Oh, you want blanks? Here you go. If you wanted hits, you could have fed me a token. So.
I was thinking about this today. Because I have a long drive home and I don't have anything else to think about. It's really sad, actually. If Lando attacks Palpatine, like Officer Palpatine, and has to spend a brace to do that attack, can he then modify a dice by spending the brace?
Yes.
So he can spend the brace twice in a row?
Give me a sec.
Okay.
Let me pull up this card real fast, because
Okay.
now I'm curious. I just don't want to say something wrong. Rebels.
I think he can, because it's not spending it twice, I think.
While attacking, you may discard a defense token to set. So it doesn't matter if it's spent or not, and it's not technically during the spend defense token step. So when you attack the Emperor, you're required to spend something, so that's a cost. It's not in the limit of how many tokens you can spend per attack. So then you spend one, and then chuck it, and then you can set the dice.
Yeah, because I know you can't spend two of the same token and
I think that's technically just during the defense token step.
Got it. Okay.
So,
Good to know.
Which would bring up I think there's that not used version of while defending, you may spend one of your defense tokens to force the attacker to reroll one or more of its dice, which honestly just brace. Unless they have all your stuff accuracy, for the most part, you're just using Lando on the offense. So, anyone have any final thoughts on Ryan's list or
I'm proud of him.
add to it?
That's what I wanted to do was kill Starhawk. He did what I could not.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was the only person all tournament to kill a Starhawk. So
yes.
I was very happy about that. That I did. They were a problem throughout the tournament. They were very difficult to kill, and I was very happy to take it down. So if Starhawks are a problem in your meta, consider my list. That's really all it's going to do is just kill big ships.
Consider boarding troopers. Consider them.
Consider boarding troopers. Yes.
Honestly, I'll just keep preaching how awesome boarding troopers are. It has always been one of my favorite cards. We were joking before this that maybe we should change the title of our podcast from the command stack to the boarding troopers, because I think we all love the card. I really, really like your list. I like Radis, and Overload Pulse. That's another one of my favorite cards. So everything about your list is I could fly that list and enjoy myself. So I really, really like it. So
yeah, I highly recommend. I mean, it's one trick. It's just one trick, but it's super fun. And when it goes off, you're deleting a ship.
Yeah, that is so much fun. Okay, so let's now move over to Garrett's fleet.
Okay, so I flew Republic with Tarkin, and I flew the Devil Venator 2 Devil Pelta list. And so the first Venator, it's got Tarkin. He had expert shield techs along with him, spats, of course, ordnance experts, thermal shields being the most important thing, APTs, and then he had DBYs just to fit the points in. And then my second Venator had Intel Officer, spats again, thermals, APTs, and XI7s. He was my scary boy. And then the two Peltas, purely support, both have projection experts. One had munitions and one had parts resupply. I had no squadrons. I felt confident with my double flax. But basically, my list strengths, I could dish out a lot of damage with the spats at that medium range of my token. And I could also tank a lot of damage with my projection experts. And then the thermal shields, reducing those huge dice pools from onagers and front arcs of those ISDs, which is really what I was tooling against, was really onagers. I thought I was going to see a lot more than I did. And I think I only faced against one. And then weaknesses, right? I'm weak against people with huge fighters with Sloan, and I'm weak against Akbar and Martuk specifically, because my thermal shields are useless against a well-run Martuk, Recusant, Patriot's Fist. Let me add 7 die with the Confire command dial. I got to face him twice, which was awesome. So first day, first match, I played the person Ryan played second. It was Drew with his Venator and Sloan, and then 12 squadrons. And no matter what, 12 squadrons with Sloan throwing a blue die versus me is going to be a problem. So he took first player, and he went against my Solar Corona. He came in, I deployed far away. We met at, I think, round 4 maybe. he of course did his Sloan. Let me roll 13 blue die against you. And then he had a Venator was his big ship along with his Quasar, and he got it. I was happy for him because he got such a good roll on me. He had expanded launchers on the front of his Venator and X-Rax. So he rolled everything, got 2 accuracies and then doubles on all the blacks. So he was able to pop one of my Venators. And I was happy that could happen. No, I wasn't super happy for me, but it was fun because again, new player there. And and then his Quasar he flew it a little bit far away and I couldn't catch it. He couldn't activate the squad. So, and I finished that match 6-5 because he did manage to pop that Venator and I popped his, but so you never expect expanded launchers until they're in front of you.
Well, that's
taken.
That's one of the Imperial Venator builds we kind of touched on a little bit. Just throw a bunch of crazy amount of black dice at the front.
Yeah, and if you hit the dice, man, it goes fast.
I'm gonna jump in real fast. What are your other objectives? You said you had
my objectives. Sorry, I never really planned on using them much because I had a $3.99 bid. So I took most wanted, contested outposts, and solar corona. So that was the first match. Got the 6-5, and then I got to face what I dreamed about facing, which was an onager, but it was a Simoon, onager, and an interdictor, which is what I kind of tooled against. And that match went really good. He had Mahdi, I think it's his admiral, and I basically full steamed to where his onager was, flanked around using nav dials because Tarkin. So I guess my list, right? It's the Rube Goldberg token machine. So if you get it going at the beginning, I just have unlimited tokens coming. Engineering tokens, Confire tokens. I'm throwing away tokens. I'm putting them on my ship so fast. And so I was able to refresh the spats. And so I got every spat I needed. And I was able to burn through all the hull on the onager, the Imperial, and the interdictor. And I was able to 10-1 them, which is exactly what my list was made to do. It was made to fight big, large ships and sink them, and then neuter every single one of his shots with my thermals. And then protection experts, just keep refilling the shields. So that was a good match. And then my last match was against Nathan, who had the Martuk 3 hard cells with a Recuset Patriot's Fist, which was my worst nightmare because it's just adding dice. And he flew great. I got to say, I don't know if he listens to this or not, but I flew against him day 1 and day 2, and our matches were the most fun matches of the days. We were just having a really good time, just brawling in the middle, and both times, his reg stick got away with 1 whole point left. Both times, I was salty. But the first day, he flew first player into my second player, and they picked a contested outpost, and so even though his Registant got away, I was able to pop, I believe, 1 hard cell, and then I collected most of the contested outpost points, and he took 1 Venator down. So he was really close to either getting a 10-1, or I'm sorry, like an 8. I think we finished at 7-4. He got the 7, I got the 4, but it was, if I would have got that Registant, I think about it still.
It haunts your dreams.
It does. So that was my day 1, and then day 2, like we were just saying, I dreamed about destroying Starhawks. They make me mad. I was upset about them. I was salty. So, anyways, round 1, I played Ruben, who Ryan got to blow up, and so I picked Advanced Gunnery because he had the bid, right? I picked Advanced Gunnery because I didn't want to deal with the fire lanes or his sensor team, or what is sensor team? Sensor net. Token collection. So I flew into it and it went good. I flew my Tarkin Star Destroyer too far out and wasn't able to keep him in double arc close range to get all my dice in out the front and then my spats. And so he managed to take down one of my Venators, one of my Peltas, and then ran away. But after that match, I was like, okay, I am bound and determined to destroy a Starhawk. And then lo and behold, I got to play Robert next, Rob from Texas. And he also had I think the almost exact same list as Ruben just had. And so this was my sweatiest match of the day. I mean, we were both sweating. I managed to optimally do everything I could. I got both ships trapping his Starhawk. I didn't pick advanced gunnery to try and help some. I just accepted the fact that he was going to collect those tokens, and I didn't even worry about it. But I moved in with both Venators, with the Peltas behind them, and I got every double arc and every spat in, and I exhausted and spent all of his defense tokens, all of his shields, and I think half the health at the end because he kept pulling cards off and criticals off. But and he managed to get my ships, both my Venators, but it was I came to the conclusion that, without a way, like boarding troopers, no matter, because I wasn't rolling bad. I was rolling all the dice I could, getting what I expected. And it was just not enough to punch through and finish the Starhawk. And then he had his squads who were uncontested, able to bomb me. Yeah, I just couldn't dish out enough damage fast enough. And then last match, I had a rematch with Nathan again, with the Recusant, and this time he got both my Venators, and his Recusant got away again. But it was fun. I had a ton of fun, and I wish the Republic could have gone further, but we're still struggling to break in that Type 4.
You were the highest placing Republic player.
Yeah. We're trying. Okay, we're trying. It's hard out there. Okay, I'm coming back with a vengeance in Nova. Stand by.
I think one of my favorite things that you said during the tournament was like, how did that go? It went great. I just YOLO'd across the table.
Oh, yeah. Full steam. Flew in my perfect brick formation. Rammed right into him. It was beautiful.
So I have a question on your Admiral Tarkin. What did you normally set his tokens to, like at the beginning of the game? Because you get to set 6, then you get to peel them off. What did you set?
So I do 4 Confier and I do 2 Engineering. All right. And then the first round, and then on the Venators themselves, the first 3 rounds all navigate. Because they fly like bricks. Horrible navigation chart. Okay, except at speed 2, it's okay. But at 3, horrible. So, all right. So we've got 3, the 4 Confires, pass out the Confires first, and then the next round, you put out your spat tokens if it's applicable, and then it can help, and it'll determine, it'll keep them from moving somewhere you don't want them to move, or it'll make them think about it. The next round, you pass out the Confire tokens again. And then by this point, you can start using your Peltas because you've queued up their tokens to be able to refresh the resupplies. So the Peltas push out Engineering and Confire tokens, and now Tarkin can use the Confire token for concentrate fire command items on your flagship. And that allows you to get that extra die-in. And then you can also refresh your spats with your munitions resupply. And then by the end, things are looking pretty rough for the Republic usually. So then you start passing out either an Engineering dial or a token. Depending on how many resupplies you have left, I do a token to each Venator, and then they move shields, and the Peltas send shields. So at the front end, I load up Confire, back end, Engineering. And you just, depending on your situation, either do his dial on the flagship or pass out another Engineering token to each ship. The Republic of Tarkin is just so good with that, being able to choose one of each. I wish the Empire's Tarkin was equally as versatile, but I love him, especially if you get your token generation machine going, because you need it as Republic, but you can't mess up. That's key. Like if you miss one round with your token shenanigans, party's over. You're in trouble.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the Republic have such a high skill threshold, and one of the reasons why we don't see more players playing it. Because, like you said, if you mess up, you're done.
There's no going back.
You need all the tokens all the time, and you have multiple ways to get them, but they have to go in the certain order.
Yeah, and so on those spats, like if you miss a round where you don't have that Confire token, there's a whole round where your ship is maybe going to produce 2 damage, and and in Armada every round counts, especially Venators, because I love Venators, but they just don't dish out very much damage without extra help.
Yep. They're a little pillow-fisted. kind of.
I would agree with all that. Anything else on Garrett's fleet or any of his matchups?
Did you have any? I didn't catch. Did you have any titles on your ships? Like Tranquility?
I did not.
Yeah.
No, and I don't want to give away the thing I'm bringing to Nova, but
Tranquility.
obviously Tranquility. I think it would have helped. I would have taken off DBYs. I've rolled really good this tournament, unusually good for me, and so I never used it. But I think
always also a trap.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to Nova and roll a blank. So I'm just feeling the bones.
Okay, yeah, because that was actually what I was going to ask you as well. You could switch out the DBY for Tranquility, because Tranquility is so bonkers powerful, especially when you're getting handed shields from 2 Peltas.
Yeah, and even with that, like my shield management was so good. I mean, because I was taking a lot of firepower from both those Starhawks. I mean, it was coming in by the double digits per shot.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to my fleet now. And I'll then go over my fleet real fast and talk about it. If you want like a super in-depth breakdown of it and all my matches, I did a Backseat Admiral on the Ion Radio YouTube channel and went into every single match. So I'll just be touching highlights here. So this is a list that I started working on back when, right before all the Potamacs. I was going to bring a Starhawk, what I refer to as a hate hawk with the double salvo, and basically the same style of all rogues / here's Hera to hand it to aces like Nathan ended up winning the tournament with, but I wasn't able to go to that tournament. And then I was going to do it at Adepticon, but then Adepticon got canceled. So then I had to like shelve this in my brain and just like, one day I will ruin someone with a Starhawk, because I think it's like a crazy powerful ship. And I think a lot of that power comes from the fact that it actually has the double officer. So like, if you look at like where like Fish Farm was before with the MC80 versus what a Starhawk is, I think the double officer actually has a lot to do with how much more powerful and survivable the Starhawk is, not necessarily just with where the shields are, or, it has 14 hull. So this list, farming list, live and die by the bid. So I came in with a bid of 11, which there's only 2 people that had a bigger bid than me, and that was Ryan with his I'm going to kill a Starhawk, and then Jason, who flies amazing MSU Akbar, which can also kill a Starhawk. So those are like the only 2 lists I think in the entire tournament that would be able to outbid me with this. But I went in with it. I don't really like going to tournaments with less than 10 points a bid, just so that I can have control of what I want to do. So I have a Starhawk Battleship Mark II with Krista Agate, Whalix, Blissix, and Expert Shield Tech. And those are the 2 officers that I think really help this, because I can get a token back and then I can reduce damage if I don't have any shields. Like, it's just such a powerful, like, you hit me with 7 damage, I brace it to 4, I just use Expert Shield Tech, and I still have half my shields on the front after that attack. Like, the amount of damage you can reduce is crazy. Or if you attack me with a small ship and you do 4 damage, I brace it to 2, I reduce it by 1, and I take 1 damage. Like, it has an astounding amount of damage that it can reduce, and then you just heal it up and shift shields. It's literally a brick. So a lot of times you don't have to worry about it taking fire from all directions. Like, you can just like focus like half of like the front and one of the sides, and then you just take the shields from that and you just move it, and you just keep reducing damage with Expert Shield Tech. Like, it's super tanky. I like it, and as we've all been preaching on this podcast, boarding troopers. I love boarding troopers. Boarding troopers is here basically to make my objective that most people want to take more scary. Because if I ever am able to get to you at close range, or you plan on closing on me in close range, I will trigger boarding trooper, and then I will try to kill you. Ken and I actually were talking about when I generated a lot of the ideas for this list, and it was after it was back in like 2021, and I played him, and I used like a Morello like triple lambda list with all the token farming things like that, and he's like, That is the most annoying list that I've ever placed. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hold on a second. Give me a minute. I will make a worse list.
He
So I
literally pulled out his phone as soon as that was over, and he's like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. It's funny because John will build fleets on command. It's like, I have this great idea. Hold the phone. I need to create this new list.
my wife actually says I get a look on my face because I'll sometimes do this when I'm supposed to be sleeping, and then she like freaks out because I'm like suddenly moving in my bed to grab my phone to make a list. I have a problem, and then she's like, "Oh, he's just making a list," and then she goes back to sleep. So I took like farming shenanigans with VCXs and combined it with the Starhawk list, which was already annoying to kill, and then I'm like, I also played a lot of Sloniger, or not Sloniger, it wasn't there yet, but Avenger Sloan with boarding troopers, and I'm like, these are like the 3 worst things I've ever had in tournament play, and I'll put them all into one giant stack of terrible. Then I have point defense ion cannons, mainly because I would rather you not get double blacks against me. Link turbo laser towers, it's very versatile for re-rolling my red dice, or flacking squadrons, which is what I ended up doing against Ken, and it worked really well. Unity allows me to get the second redirect, so I can stack this hawk with 2 braces, 2 redirects, the contain, and then the salvo. And that's the combination that I took against everyone. Like, I have options. I could technically take like an evade, but I didn't go up against an onager. But like, part of me is like, I think I'll just usually stick with the double brace, double redirect. Like, it just makes you really, really tanky. And that card also allows you to reroll against Squadron. So if you come at me with Squadron Heavy, I have a lot of rerolls. But the problem with this list is you only have one actual ship keeping you on the table. So if they're able to kill your Starhawk, it's like automatically you're going to get a 1 point from this. So that should kind of be your goal when facing it. I have a GR75 with 8R Talon, and that's so I can basically treat my VCXs as being 3 instead of 2. Or you get a transport close enough to Lando, he's going to double tap it and delete it in 1 round. It feels dirty when you do it, but it's actually one of my favorite things to do now that I've been doing it all the time. I almost did it in every single round against all the GR75s that I went up against, so I enjoy that. And I also did it to a suppressor, Gazanti, but it's kind of terrible. Then I have GR75 with Ahsoka and parts resupply, and the reason I have parts resupply, Ahsoka here is the same thing that Ryan was talking about, specifically building against the list that Sam has. Because there's other officers that I would much rather bring in this fleet. Like, I think Leia would be really good, but you don't really see Cham, because Cham would just mess up a Starhawk. Or specifically Torn Far to reroll, because I have a lot of fighters, a lot of blue dice, no rerolls. Like, that would be really, really good. But Ahsoka's here as the get out of jail free card. So if I face the thank you for playing / shenanigans list, that here's surprise attack, start here, I'm shooting you on turn 1 close range and your speed 0. There's only 2 ways how to trigger that cataclysm off the beginning. And that is using Grand Moff Tarkin like Ken's planning, which we never really see. Or you're using Hondo. And if you use Hondo, that means I get to give any token I want to the Starhawk after you've selected your tokens. And then Ahsoka's like, it's a nav, get rid of the raid, and I can move. So that card there is, if someone outbids me, I can safely pick surprise attack and not care. That's it. Parts resupplies there so that I can pass out tokens and then still command things with the GR75 or move, because if it stops moving, it's dead. For squadrons, I already mentioned them earlier, but we'll repeat them. Lando, because I can double tap, chuck his token and kill off a transport, and trading him for a transport is usually always a good deal. Char to pin down enemy squadrons. 4 YT-2400s to do the work of anti-ship, anti-squadron, be annoying. And then 2 VCXs to pair with this specific set of objectives. My objectives are advanced gunnery, which with boarding troopers, you kind of really don't want to take, because the Starhawk has a really, really powerful front, and I'll double tap then into the same arc. And if we close at close range, I'll spend all your useful tokens, double tap you, or attack you once. You'll use all your useful tokens, and then I attack you again, and all your tokens are gone. So like a lot of times when you're facing an onager, they'll shoot you, and then they have like one turn that they're at close range before they like speed away at speed 3 or speed 4. And on that specific turn that the onager ends there, I can boarding troopers and practically kill it with advanced gunnery outright. Or if you come up against another Starhawk build like what Ryan did with his Overload Pulse, I can spend all your tokens and try to deplete your tokens faster than you're depleting my tokens to get an edge on a first player Starhawk. Boarding Troopers just really, really helps that with advanced gunnery. Then I have firing lanes, and with the VCXs, I'll just farm them the entire time. So that's like 45 points per round. I usually end up with 17 tokens when we play that game because I chuck the tokens under the other player. And then Sensor Net, it's the same thing. I farm tokens. You can farm tokens on your end if you want, but I'll farm tokens better on my end. And then if we clash in the middle, whatever happens, happens. And then I get extra points from that. Part of the thing that makes this list so dirty, and I said it every time that I've played it, this list is like pretty much cancer, is that only half the factions have an ability to actually play these games. Like CIS and GAR have absolutely no access to strategic, which means that they can't play sensor net and they really can't play firing lanes, and that's why you never see those except for this list. And then on top of that, like Imperial don't really take lambdas, because if you're going to take something that's a lambda shuttle, like all of the Imperial aces cost so much that they don't have the points to fit in a 15-point squadron that's not going to really do anything besides relay, because you already have Jendon, because you would always bring Jendon. So they don't really have strategic. So the only faction that you're really going to face that's going to utilize strategic right now is other Rebel players, and Rebel players make up like, well, we said 11 out of the 30, so just under half. And out of those lists, how many people are being VCXs? So like, if you look at that, the farm list happens as long as I have bid and face almost anyone. So it's kind of, I feel bad playing it, but I don't at the same time, because that's why this is high level competition. So that's why you make the meta call.
I want to say that. I do want to address that because it's kind of a topic of conversation. You're not like it's not incumbent upon the players, in my opinion, to fix the lists, right? No. You play what is legal. It's on the game designers if they, to make it the healthier environment or whatnot. And so it's a legal fleet. And so I get very tired of this. If you don't want to play the Hawk, bring something that can kill it. Because the most fun I had at AdeptCon was killing the Starhawk. I had a blast. It made all the money, the $95 ticket that I spent on Saturday, it made it all worth it to kill that Starhawk. And I overkilled it. I did 18 damage to that Hawk. We dealt out all the damage cards. So, I feel pretty. I think there's enough grief. Our game is in tough enough straits that we don't need to be cannibalizing our own players for bringing a list that is legal. If it's you can, in my own game, like multiple players. When I was playing Ruben, and people were starting on some of the discords to be like, making comments that are just kind of like, that really should be directed at the fleet, the ship itself, and not the player. We're a better community than that, and we don't need to make people feel bad for bringing something that there is nothing wrong with because it's legal. So I just want to just get that out there.
I would actually agree with that very much so about everything you just said, and then also about, I know we gave the fleet grief, but like Sam's, thanks for playing shenanigans like double interdictor fleet. It's legal. It does basically the same thing this does, but for the Empire.
And I love Sam's fleet because, and I said it, you can go back and listen to the podcast when we talked about it, because it pushes the meta. Those are all old concepts. There's nothing new in Sam's fleet, and it's just pushes the meta forward. It's a new itineration. It's a new puzzle to solve. So go solve the puzzle.
Yeah, I think we're entering a phase of puzzles, and there's 3 major fleet types that are going to be competing to outsolve the puzzle from each other. So you have the Starhawk farm stuff. You have onagers still. Onagers are still like, if you don't come in with an answer for an onager is going to kill you on turn 3.
Yep.
Regardless of what you have. So you need an answer for that. And then you have the MSU meta. And MSU has come back really, really strong. And it's very versatile and small points of damage. And the fleets that can do that really, really well are the Rebels can do it really, really well. They've always been the MSU Kings. But also the CIS like can really do it very well with hard cells as well. And then you can have like Patriot Fist anchoring you down. So I think we're going to see going into like all of them actually kind of, it's like a paper rock scissors almost, like onager can beat this can beat that can beat that. So we're going to have to see people developing strategies. Like we've seen the onager come out of the meta kind of because people have come up with answers for it. Starhawks aren't going to be there forever because people are going to come up with answers for it. And I'll talk about my games. There are a couple answers to it, and I just barely won my last game, which really shows you that it can be taken down with like MSU. So I started my games off by facing Ken, and as much as I like facing Ken, I didn't want to drive all the way down to GenCon to play that match. So I actually have to give Ken credit. While he lost the game, he should take it as a victory because it was the best loss that he ever had against this fleet. So he was able to hold me only to a 7-4, and his fleet is kind of funny how, I don't know if you plan this way, but with like your 94 points of squadrons and your GR75s, it comes to like 136 points. So I'm 4 points away from an 8-3, which is which was frustrating.
So oddly enough, yes, that is exactly what I did with this fleet. Is I have it designed to deprive people of 8-3s, and all my components are all 90-point components, more or less. And it's designed to, okay, I might go from a 6-5 or an 8-3 to a 7-4 if I lose this one. But if I lose this one, maybe not. So yeah, there is a little bit of reason behind the madness that I have in my fleet. But yeah, definitely after seeing the amount of damage that has been caused by John's fleets against different things I've thrown at that Starhawk list when we were preparing for the tournament, I got away with the 2 MC-30s, lost the transport in my squadrons. You know what? Bigs and a bunch of X-Wings are totally expendable, as is GR-75. My MC-30s are not.
Yeah. Our squadrons engaged, and then my Starhawk had the best flak I think I've ever had with all the rerolls in my entire life. It was like 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage. And I was like, whoa, that was crazy. So that game, it was still fun to play Ken. I just wish it was anyone else in the world. My second game I played against John, which was in another MC30 list. I think there was only 3 MC30 lists in the entire four MC30 lists in the entire field, and I ended up playing 3 of them over the course of the tournament. I had bid, he chose advanced gunnery, and he just ran, which is one of the things to frustrate the Starhawk players, because like I honestly thought at that point like my tournament run was pretty much done, because I got like just a 7, and then I won by like 13 points because we traded out squadrons. Like he killed a YT-2400 of mine, I killed a YT-2400 of his, and I killed like an X-Wing or a Rogue Squadron or something like that. That was the margin of victory. So I was like, I don't have much margin of victory over the course of 2 games. I'm kind of sitting in the middle of the pack. And then I got to face Steve, who's actually a Chicago local, and he was playing one of the Oslo fleets, and he was playing a double Star Destroyer. One was a Simoon and one was an Imperial 2, which I've beaten before, double ISD-2s, but like the Simoon actually made me concerned because most of the time I try to deploy off to the side so that they can't engage at the same turn. because I don't really want to be in blue range of both ISDs on the same turn, because that's a lot of damage. Like if I can somehow make it staggered so I'm only taking a couple reds from one of them, that's fine. But with a Simoon, that's not the case. Like the dangerous range is the red range. So he was able to put a lot of firepower. I think he got my Starhawk to 9 hull damage that he ended up doing to it, which is way closer than comfort for me to it dying. We played fire lanes, so I got 17 tokens of fire lanes because I chucked him under his Star Destroyers. But that game, my Starhawks came very close to dying, which you could end the game with 17 tokens and then still lose with the way it is. So you got to keep that Starhawk alive. So I made day 2. I was 3rd overall. The competition was really, really, really tight score-wise. I think, like what Ryan said, he had 20 points, right? Is that what you had?
Yep.
You had 20 points, and I think like 6 other players had 20 points. It was all very clustered around 20.
Yeah, I had 22, I think. 20.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the ladder right now, and from 1st to 10th, there was a 6-point spread.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot at all.
It was very, very tight. So I made day 2, and when I woke up, because we had to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, which was really, really early, I told Kat, I'm like, I think my road to success is facing both the Starhawk lists. And I ended up playing Rob the first round, which was one of the 3 Starhawk lists, because I had bid and we had to play my objectives. That was a chess game of VCXs moving tokens around to score sensor nets.
A real barn burner, that one.
Oh, man. My dice have never helped me or hurt me more. We didn't roll any. Not a single dice was rolled. We just stayed on our side of the table very carefully trying to move tokens out of each other's range, which I was joking. I was going to go for the pacifist run, see if I could make it through the whole tournament without rolling dice. So he ended up getting 10 tokens on my 17. So
Starhawks just dropped anchor and just
yeah, that's pretty much it. Near the end, he was like deciding if he could send in his fighters to try to kill some of my fighters to make up some of that points. But that was like turn 4 or 5, and he had to like come across the board.
But you know, like, to your list building, kind of meta call, like the boarding troopers gives you a huge advantage if he wanted to try to engage you. So like you had a huge advantage before you even deployed one ship like from a fleet building standpoint.
Yeah, the boarding trooper really, really did, which comes up again. And then the second game, I faced this other Starhawk, Ruben, and he was looking at my list and he's like, I was going to take advanced gunnery and we were going to duke it out in the middle of the table until I saw you had boarding troopers. And he ended up choosing SensorNet, and we did pretty much the exact same mirror game again. No dice roll. Turn 4 or 5, he started to move his fighters across to see if he could eke it out. I think he got 7 tokens, and I had again 17. So that one was just an 8-3, which landed me at that point tied tournament point wise for first, but behind 15 MOV to Jason, which is, besides Ryan's list, probably the list I wanted to face the least, because I knew Ryan was just gonna straight out kill me. So I didn't want to face that.
Yep. And
then I looked at Jason's list, and we'll probably talk about the top 4 lists in the next episode, but Jason has this Akbar CR90 thing. I've played it before. He's tabled me before with it. Like, he's really, really good at it. And I'm like, he tabled me before and had multiple ships that were holding me on the table. Now I have one ship holding me on the table. So Andy has bid apparently on me. So I'm done. Like, I just have to figure out how to keep the Starhawk on the table long enough that I don't get 10-1. That was my goal. And what is it? He had bid. He had a bunch of terrible choices, so I ended up taking an abandoned mining facility and trying to delay engagement for as physically long as possible. With how tight the tournament was, like day 2 was just as tight as day 1 was point wise. Like there wasn't a lot of like blowouts in any direction or anything like that. I mean, Ryan was helping with his like 1 point victory. So it was like very, very close. So I'm like, everyone, like I was technically tied for first, but by like, 1 point. So I needed like at least, I think I figured 4 points to face in the top 4 because I wanted the world invite. And Jason and I's game came down to the very wire. If he had either one more round, or I want to say maybe just one more ship that had arc and range on me in one of the rounds, I think he would have killed me. His Akbar MC30 had this ungodly crazy shot that he rolled in 3 double reds, a crit, and a blank, and then he just TRC'd it to a double. And at that point, I had no more braces, and I'd already Waylixed one of the braces back. So I just ate 9 straight damage. So I had no more shields, and I had 5 hull damage, and I knew I was going to be taking another shot like that again. So on turn 6, I was like, please, the 2 shields that are regenerated are enough to keep me from dying to Akbar. If I wasn't first player, my Starhawk would have been there and he would have had multiple CR90s on it and I would have died. So like that's what I mean. Like MSU can easily take out a Starhawk. You just got to engage it faster. We talked about that after the game. He's like, I was playing my objective and he's like, I think I farmed 1 too many rounds of tokens. He's like, if I just went for you right off the bat, I think I had you. I'm like, oh yeah, I was scared the entire time. I'm like, please farm tokens on me. Please. I don't want to take shots. So that, like, I played 2 games with no dice, and then we played that game that was like a ton of dice, and that was probably my hardest match of the entire tournament, was trying to survive. It was like a zombie apocalypse. Like the Starhawks is like, we're gonna make it. We got to get to the safety. Turn 6. We just have to make it to turn 6. And I think after his last roll, I think I had like 9, 10 hull damage again. So I was like 4 away from blowing up. So that was really, really crazy. And then after the game, he's like, I think you won. I'm like, no, that game was only like a 7. It will be fine. And then we looked at the score and I had to wait for the last table to finish. And it just eked out the win. So super, super excited about that. Was not what I was expecting. Thank you.
Won.
So yeah, it was a crazy good tournament. So you guys have any final thoughts on my list or any of the games I played?
Did you play any onagers? Did you play any onagers?
No. One of those things that we've talked about, like you never face what you actually expect to face. I was very worried about MSU, which I faced a lot of them, like Rebel Small, and I was afraid of double onager or just onager in general. And the onagers weren't really there. There was only 4 onager lists, and I played 5 Rebel matches out of my 6 games. So there's only 11 Rebel players, and I played through, if you don't count me, 5 out of the 10 Rebel lists. I was very much Rebel on Rebel fighting the entire tournament.
I had a very stress-free day too, and I enjoyed my.
Yeah, so I think the command staff did pretty decent. I took first. Ryan, you took 5th, and then Garrett, you took.
I took 8th.
8th.
My final thought. Had I known, I only had to get 7th place to get a Worlds invite, I would not have YOLO'd into the Starhawk. Had I known, I would have picked advanced gunnery, speed 0'd, and sat there.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, there was in the top 8, 3 people already had world invites. I think it was Jason. I believe Nathan. That's the CIS player, right?
Yeah, Nathan,
and Nick already had world invites, so they trickle down very, very far.
That's okay, because Garrett, you're going to represent Command Stack at Nova, and you're going to win that, or
Listen, that's the plan. That's the plan. If it doesn't work out, I think I don't know if there's any more. I have to go to Italy.
Pack your bags. We're going to Italy, folks.
They did just open up a San Francisco one in November. So
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, is that public now? Okay, I didn't know.
it's public. Yeah, it's
Golden
public.
State Games. Golden State Games. Go to it. Admiral Tater. Golden State. Admiral Tater.
No, you don't want people to go, and then that way you can win it and then get your world's invite.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, let's play Nova. Nova. We're gonna do it.
So I think next episode we'll kind of talk about the top 4, kind of the top 8 trends, I guess maybe, and kind of how where we think the game is going in terms of meta cycles and whatnot, and what to look out for.
Yeah, I think that would that's our plan. With all of us being in the tournament, we kind of just needed to change our format a little bit because we normally cover 4 fleets and there was 4 of us, so we weren't able to do the full top 4, which was originally the plan. So then we could just talk about our own fleets.
Sorry, guys.
Did we want to talk about or save it for our next podcast? A little teaser, the kind of the awards presentations or anything like that that were put on. Should we save that as a teaser?
Sure. Let's say. How about you tease it just a little bit?
Okay.
Draw people back in,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about that on the next one.
Tease me. I don't.
Okay, so I'm going to, if anyone's familiar with the new Brian Windhorst meme from NBA reporting, I'm going to try to do my best impression. You can look it up. It's, so they, this was the first time that Asmodee was in charge of organized play at a tournament, I think since they took over, or since, not they took over, but since the pandemic, let's just say.
2019.
Yeah, so at the tournament, they gave prizes out to the faction winners and who did well in the factions. And so they gave Imperials, and they gave Rebels, and then Garrett, who won Gar, they only had, they didn't have Rebel or Gar or CIS prizes. And so what they did after they realized that, they came over and they specifically asked all the Gar, all the CIS players to come over to the table, and they took their information down, including their addresses. Now, why is that?
Tune in next time for Command Stack.
Yeah.
Email it.
That's the tease.
I think one thing to bring out, and Ryan, you kind of already said it, is that, Asmodee had a good presence for the tournament. And I think it was actually really neat to see them being directly involved and supporting a large event like GenCon. I think it was really cool.
It's good that they were there, right? It's good that they got to, I'm thrilled that they could finally get there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, in their next episode.
Yeah, I think that will be a good segue into the next episode. So any final thoughts on our fleets and the GenCon experience before we wrap up, guys? Let's start with Ken, and then we could just rotate around or just jump out there if you want to.
Well, like I said, for me, day 2 was great. I mean, I enjoyed not having a stress-filled day. But GenCon in general, I think the takeaway for me is, I got to hang out with Ryan again. Garrett, I got to finally meet you face-to-face, so that was fun. I think just the number of people that we got to meet in general, for me, that was the big draw for GenCon. And I'm really big shout-out to everyone that came by, that recognized us, said hello, and everything else. We really appreciate it. And that's part of the reason that we do for the on radio side, the BAT reps, and why we do this here for Command Stack, because there's a lot of community support, and we really appreciate it.
Well
I agree
said.
with all that.
Yeah, well said.
I also got to say, if you're going to fight a Starhawk and you're not prepared, the best way to win is to not play at all.
True.
Hey, stay in your corner.
Right. Being the Starhawk player, I agree with that statement. No, I really enjoyed GenCon. I think it was great to finally get back out and be with the community again. It's been a very long time for me to go to a major tournament like this, and be around so many great players, because we had players that were at GenCon that played Armada that weren't playing in the tournament because of other things that would come up. So like, it was a group of us that were playing the tournament. There was a group of us that were just there supporting other people, and you can really feel how good of a community Armada is.
Yeah, I almost forgot the feeling of how positive it was, like around other people playing Armada. It was a good refresher. It really, what does it say? Got me reinvigorated for the game, I think. I'm super excited now to go to everything. Again, it's impossible to go to everything.
I just want to say, no one talks a good game like Garrett does. I roomed with Garrett, and he's like, it was really fun to kind of bunk with Garrett. This is top 8, which I think you were thrilled.
First top 8 ever.
First top 8 ever. This is his
in the scrapbook.
His best tournament, and you thought top 8. You thought he would have just won the last 3 worlds back to back to back, because he was talking a big game. And if he ever, God forbid he ever wins a tournament, because he'll be insufferable once he wins.
Whoa! It's called power positivity.
Oh man. Okay, I think we're going to call it here for an episode. Thank you very much for joining us. Ryan, where can you find us?
You can follow us on Twitter. I'm kind of curating it now to be kind of the Armada community Twitter. So we follow all the people, all the content creators in Armada. So if you want to just kind of have one place to come check out Armada content, come check out our Twitter. But we also, you can catch our podcasts at Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Spotify. And then you can also, you guys upload the podcast, the video version, to Ion Radio's YouTube page.
Perfect. Okay, so let's do our outro. I'm John.
I'm Ken.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm Ryan.
And you've been watching the Command Stack, and we have been your command staff, and we will catch you next time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.